It's another high quality podcast action.
What?
Nick,
You can't
how the hell are you?
podcast action?
Yes, we're reiterating or being redundant this time around because it seems like that is sort of the theme of the week,
Oh, I
at least in terms
guess.
of politics.
A little. We've pulling back the curtain a little bit. We've recorded these on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
and Blasey Ford testifies tomorrow.
Yep.
Rosenstein meets with Trump tomorrow.
Yep.
And then today, just a bunch of stuff happened and got released, and I've had no time to look at this stuff.
It's coming
Well,
out so quickly
yeah.
that we just we haven't had time,
So
unfortunately.
things need to stop happening, like when my life is really busy.
I have more important things to do than, well, more pressing things, I guess I would say. I got to go to
Yeah.
work. I have a job
Yeah,
and other
exactly.
things that my life goes on with. But anyway, this is a podcast where two good buds sit down, one with a drink, the other with maybe a drink. I mean, I have
Yeah,
beer.
I have one.
Okay,
It's just
but
coffee, but it's there.
we've got tangents galore. We sit down and chat over some drinks about politics, science primarily, or anything else that happened to interest us in the last week or two, or however long it's been since we last recorded one of these. But
No lack of
let's
stuff this week.
let's just get into it. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep it under an hour. We'll try, but there's just so much shit this week with our first and foremost topic of Bart O'Kavanaugh,
Yes, Bart
as
O'Kavanaugh
he's codenamed.
as Mark Judge so tried to hide it. If you're gonna give someone a fake name in a autobiography, maybe don't include their actual last name in the fake last name. Just a thought.
Yeah, eat. I, I don't know. So much of this is that kind of strain of it's just there's too much going on and so much to unpack. But I didn't have a ton of time to read into a lot of the information coming out. You did, though.
Sort
So
of.
why don't you give me the lowdown on all of the shit coming to light?
So just today alone, the Washington Post released Bart O'Kavanaugh's 1982 high school calendar that he has like a bunch of stuff written on. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but the guy has pretty bad handwriting just from a glance at it. I don't know how anybody can read what the heck he had on his docket between May and August of 1982.
I'm pretty
But
sure he probably can't either.
yeah, I don't. Maybe on some of those days it said, "Do not try to rape anybody today." I don't know.
Maybe
Um,
that would be more of a tell than anything else we've seen so far. Although, from what I've heard, it sounds like we've got what, four people who either corroborate through affidavit or
Affidavits.
Yeah,
Gee whiz.
four affidavits.
What, what is that pronunciation?
Hey man, I've had a beer. Just get on with it.
Okay. So the other thing that was released today was Dr. Ford's lawyers released the results of the polygraph test.
Mm.
I just skipped to the TLDR, also known as the conclusion, that found she pretty much it just says she was being honest, but it explains briefly how the polygraph is measured and what all the numbers within the report mean. I didn't I didn't read, of course, the beginning, which tells me how the whole process works. It just basically said in bold at the bottom that there was a very low likelihood of deception. So
Fair
that
enough.
basically means, according to this polygraph test and the administrator that gave the test and wrote the report, she's telling the truth. She also has a sworn affidavit as well. Now, Sunday was the big I don't know what you want to call it. It's not the biggest story because the one that came out today was pretty big. But
Yeah.
Deborah Ramirez, who was a fellow student at Yale University with Kavanaugh, she alleges that they were having a party of some sort, like a dorm party.
Sure.
Um,
As you do when you're in college.
right. So she says we were sitting in a circle and people would pick who drank. Ramirez was chosen repeatedly, and she said and quickly became inebriated. At one point, a male student pointed a gag plastic penis in her direction. So I guess they can't say dildo in the New Yorker. I don't know. Later,
Apparently not.
Yeah. Later, she was on the floor, foggy and slurring her words as the male student and another student nearby. A third male student then exposed himself to her. I remember a penis being in front of my face. I knew that's not what I wanted, and even in that state of mind, that she thought that's not a real penis, and other students laughing at her confusion and taunting her, one encouraging her to kiss it. She said that she pushed the person away, touching it in the process. Ramirez, who was raised a devout Catholic in Connecticut, said she was shaken. I wasn't going to touch a penis until I was married. I was embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated. She remembers Kavanaugh standing to her right and laughing, pulling up his pants. Brett was laughing. I can still see his face and his hips coming forward, like when you pull up your pants. She recalled another male student shouting about the incident. Somebody yelled down the hall, Brett Kavanaugh just put his penis in Debbie's face. It was his full name. I don't think it was just Brett. And I remember hearing and being mortified that this was out there. So, in other words, this dude sexually assaulted her while she was rather drunk. And apparently, if you're a woman who is drunk and something like that happens to, then you get blamed for it. If you're a guy and you assault a woman while you're drunk, that gives you a free pass if you live in Republican misogynist universe.
Apparently.
But, I mean, what she alleges obviously is very disturbing. You know, even I remember being a freshman in college, and I never once thought, even while intoxicated, hey, let me put my penis in a almost passed out woman's face.
Yeah, I can't say I ever had any inclination to do that ever, even when I'm not drunk.
See, when I'm drunk, I'm like as far from belligerent as possible. Like, I want to talk to everybody. I want to like make everybody laugh. I want to be like, hey, what's your favorite Muppet? I'll do an impression of it right now. That's the kind of shit I do when I'm drunk. But apparently, according to some people who were close to Brett Kavanaugh at Yale, said he was rather physical when he would become intoxicated. Whatever. I'll just say not physical in the sense that he's going to go pump iron and work out. Just not in a pleasant way.
Yeah, I mean, we all know individuals or have been around people, men and women, who might get quote-unquote handsy when they're drunk or even when they're sober. So it's not uncommon, but this is not that by any means.
No. Now, today's new allegations, oh God, I didn't save the article. Crud. Anyways,
Oh,
I'll tell you
God.
what I remember from it.
We're professionals, we swear.
So this was Michael Avenatti's client that he earlier in the week was alluding to that something would be released. So this woman signed a sworn affidavit, basically meaning that by signing it, if a judge were to find out any of it was not true, she could be indicted for perjury. That's the point of an affidavit. So in her sworn statement, she describes these parties where men would spike women's drink, whether that be through adding grain liquor that has a higher proof to it, or just straight up drugging it so that they would pass out. And that these guys who were involved in that would just run a train on these passed out women and gang rape them. And this woman, who unfortunately fell victim to this, says that Bart O'Kavanaugh, also known as Brett Kavanaugh, was in the room while the incident was happening to her. She does not say that he was involved in it, but that he was in the room. So not very good optics for Mr. Kavanaugh that you're watching something like this happen, because it doesn't mean that he didn't participate in it either, or that he didn't participate in another woman. But that's speculative, obviously. So we come to today. We have all this new stuff that's come out throughout the week and the weekend. And despite all these allegations and these accusers who have really gone out of their way to gain credibility, Dr. Ford especially, not only signing the affidavit, but also she released that document from her therapy sessions in 2012 where she talks about the incident. She took the polygraph test.
Yep, and she also has 3 or 4 other individuals who had signed affidavits corroborating her story.
Avenatti's witness has kind of gone through the same thing, so I can't imagine that someone would go leaps and bounds to, gain credibility for the crime that they're accusing. And no matter how long ago it was too, that doesn't, I don't get why the length of time between when a crime happened and when it's reported, specifically sexual assault, why that matters. Because I can guarantee you any woman who's had the misfortune of going through something like that can tell you with great ease why they did not come forward. And I don't know why that comes as a shock to anybody, especially something that happened in the 80s, why it wasn't brought up to any sort of authorities back then. I just think no one has any sort of right to question that, and that it does not negate anything that these women have alleged either.
I mean, it's kind of like if somebody shoplifted in the 80s, it's still a crime. That doesn't change just because it's now 2018.
Right.
If you didn't get caught, it's still a crime. Or even if you did, it would still remain on your record. So saying, oh, well, we all do stupid stuff in high school and college. It's like, this is not wrong that we all do stupid shit. But this is not just stupid shit. This is definitely crossing a line into stupid shit that is actually sexual assault.
Climbing a tree that looks unclimbable and falling down and breaking a bone, that's stupid. Sexually assaulting someone is not stupid, okay? You can't, I don't know what kind of childhood you have to kind of grow up in. Obviously, you went to Georgetown Prep, so private school, probably not exactly the worst conditions to be growing up in. But to come from a place where you think that that's an okay thing to do, or that you just don't care about any sort of repercussions or the person that you're doing it to, I can't imagine that. There's no excuse for it at all. I don't care what he went on Fox News and said. Because these women, like I said, are doing so much to gain credibility and show that their stories are true. And what does he do in response? Goes on Fox News, which has no legal precedent whatsoever. And one of the points he brings up is that he was a virgin for high school and very much long then after. What does that have to do with anything?
I'll tell you.
That doesn't absolve you.
It has nothing to do with anything. Absolutely fucking nothing.
That doesn't absolve you for anything. That's like if you had never driven a car before, and the very first time you get in a car, you just drive it and get in an accident, and you say, "Oh, it wasn't my fault because I've never driven a car before." Then, like that doesn't absolve you from the crime that you did. You still committed a crime.
if you got in a car, had an accident immediately for the first time driving a car, and then your excuse was, I'm a virgin. That's what it's stupid.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, you know how people, when some people get drunk and they turn into like a quote unquote completely different person,
Yeah.
and they come up with like a different name for themselves while
Oh,
they're drunk.
yeah.
I wonder if Brett Kavanaugh's drunken persona is
It's
actually
Bart.
Bart O'Kavanaugh.
Oh.
And that's
Yeah.
why my judge listed him as Bart O'Kavanaugh in his book, is because it was actually Bart the whole time and not Brett.
Oh my God. Freaking
I
Sherlock
think we just
Holmes moment
solved
here.
this whole thing.
I think so too. Yeah, this Mark Judge guy seems really creepy too.
They both seem creepy because it was this yearbook of theirs from, was it college that it was from, or was it?
I think it was
Their
I
prep
think it was a high school yearbook.
Yeah, you might be right. I think it was high school too. You're right. But that, even then, that whole yearbook, couple of yearbook pages had some really odd information in it that seems to correlate to some interesting practices and parties and events that went on at that prep school of theirs.
Now we come to the Judicial Committee and throw Mitch McConnell in there, the invertebrate. I'm at a loss for. I think I've gone through every insult that I can think of to sling at Mitch McConnell, and I
He
still
looks
haven't
like a
found.
turtle.
I haven't found
and-
anything that sticks really, because that's just
Yeah.
how terrible a person he is.
I mean, he looks like a turtle. He doesn't have a spine. He's a bottom dweller. I don't know. He's like one of those weird ass looking fish from the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Anyway,
And he has a weird voice too.
yeah, he does.
Like
But-
the phrase he used to describe what their Republican senators' course of action is going to be is that we plan to we're going to plow right through to a vote, and we will have a vote this Friday to hopefully confirm Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court of the United States. And if you think I'm doing an impersonation, you're right, because that is what Mitch McConnell sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you didn't
Plow
understand
right
that-
through.
If you didn't understand that, what Mitch McConnell was saying is that the Senate committee is going to have a vote on Friday to hopefully appoint Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
That tells
And this
me
is only a day after our doctor sexual abuse
Dr. Ford.
sufferer, Dr. Ford, is going to appear before the committee to state her case. So they get a day to discern what they will take from that.
I think that just what that tells me is one of two things. A, they believe all these accusations and they just don't care. Or two, they think that these accusations are not true and they're just going forward with it. Both of which are pretty terrible.
You would think they would express some more discretion when it comes
No.
to appointing a Supreme Court justice that will serve for the rest of their life.
No.
Apparently not.
Chuck Grassley's Taylor Foy, accused Senate Democrats of withholding information of the Deborah Ramirez allegation
Mm-hmm.
and seeking a political takedown of Kavanaugh. Fuck you, Chuck Grassley, first of all. You're accusing Democrats of withholding information when you have done and continue to do the same exact thing with Kavanaugh's judicial records. We still have not seen them all. Your party wouldn't give Merrick Garland a hearing for 8 months, but rammed Gorsuch straight through. One might even say you plowed him right through. So you can shut the fuck up when you criticize Democrats for stalling, Which I may add are actual legitimate reasons to stall a judicial committee vote, because Kavanaugh is accused of 3 instances of sexual assault and misconduct. To me, that matters. It should matter, and it should disturb women that Republicans don't seem to care.
And I think there are even Republican women who somehow are still standing behind Brett Kavanaugh in all of this.
So there are 6 Republican senators who are women. Lisa
Yes.
Murkowski of Alaska, Joni Ernst of Iowa, Susan Collins from Maine, Cindy Hyde Smith from Mississippi, Deb Fisher from our home state, Nebraska,
Whoa.
and Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. None of these 6 women are on the Judiciary Committee. The Republican side of the Judiciary Committee is all white men.
Go figure.
How can any woman in good conscience vote for Kavanaugh? I mean, what a slap in the face that is to women everywhere if any woman in the Senate, Democrat or Republican, voted for Kavanaugh. I just cannot fathom what would be going through a woman's head to be seeing all this and to just ignore it and say, get on that court, Brett Kavanaugh / Bart O'Kavanaugh. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't.
The only reason that I could find for a woman to vote for Bart O'Kavanaugh is along party lines, as we've seen pretty ubiquitously in the last few years. Well, not even the last few years, more like the last decade or so, has been pretty damn divided in the Senate and the House on both sides, where party lines have been especially prominent in Republican voting procedures. I don't know. It's politics at its worst. And I'm not, again, we've discussed this before, where I don't know if there's really a solution to it aside from just getting rid of filth like Mitch McConnell and other leaders in the Senate and House who are on the right-hand side of issues, or in the Republican camp, who just seem to be perpetuating this kind of us versus them, pitting one side against the other perpetually, to only care about keeping party lines as the main divider between political ideologies, instead of trying to work together like you should be, ideally.
I mean, the Mitch McConnell-led Republicans have shown they don't want to really work together, though. I mean, it's
Absolutely not.
Once they had a majority, even when they didn't have a majority during Obama's first 2 years, the whole reason that Harry Reid went to the nuclear option, as it's called, to just have a simple majority to approve judge appointees, is because Mitch kept blocking it. There were judge benches that were left open that Obama had nominees for that they weren't being approved at all because of Mitch McConnell and his stalling. Mm-hmm. So Harry Reid went to the nuclear option. Maybe in retrospect was a little dumb because Mitch has abused that at every turn possible. Then the Republican majority in the Senate comes, and all they do is just stall everything out that isn't a fiscal budget, Yeah. And now here we are. Mitch isn't going anywhere unless something traumatic happens. Gosh, it's just, I don't even know what to say anymore about it.
It's just damn unfortunate is what it comes down to, because we have to deal with all this bullshit.
I mean, his whole thing about not giving Merrick Garland any sort of, not even a judicial committee hearing, paid off. I can only imagine if Trump didn't win, if they would just have held out for until what? I don't know. For 4 years, hoping Hillary would have lost the re-election campaign in 2020. I don't know.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Anyway.
It's enough to drive a man to drink.
Oh, really? So, drink what?
Beer.
Beer?
Like I do every week.
Every week? A beer?
This is the best segue ever.
Yeah, totally.
This week on a segment we'll just call from here on out, What's John Drinking? We've got a Dogfish Head beer for the fall, as we are starting to get into the cooler weather.
Yeah,
which I know you hate.
Yeah.
But we're still in that transitionary time where it's not freezing cold out. You walk outside, your nose freezes, the snot in your nose turns to hard ice. But to that end, since it's before Halloween or leading up to Halloween, I've got the Dogfish Head Pumpkin Ale. It's a basic white bitch beer with pumpkin spice flavoring, or more correctly, a brown ale brewed with pumpkin and spices.
So do you really get that feel of the nutmeg and allspice and cinnamon in it?
You get pumpkin. I mean, it tastes like a gourd or a squash, as pumpkin is.
That's kind of disappointing.
Well, you still get the cinnamon and nutmeg in there, but as with most pumpkin beers, if you've ever had a pumpkin beer, they will often take on the more fruity characteristics of what's added to them, or in this case, the more vegetal characteristics of the pumpkin, which I don't mind. And honestly, I have yet to find the perfect pumpkin beer that is one that tastes pretty much identical to pumpkin pie. But it's not a bad beer. It's reasonable, and it's tasty. I'd drink it again. Probably give it a solid either a 3 3.75 or maybe a 4 out of 5. It's well balanced and easy drinking, and can't say too much bad about it other than maybe a little more on the spices side as opposed to the gourd flavors.
Yeah, gourd is not a very appetizing sounding word, yet alone a beer.
Yeah, you might try it. Don't knock it till you try it, sort of thing.
I don't know if I'd want to have a beer that tastes like a gourd.
Well, Mitch McConnell, you're a bitch.
Yes, I know I am, but I can't hear you over all this Coke money. Blah, 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 blah.
Coke? Cocaine? Mitch McConnell does cocaine?
No, what? No, the Koch brothers.
I know. Bad joke.
God damn.
Anyway.
Dude, you're off today.
I'm really terribly on with bad jokes.
Don't have the pumpkin beer again next time we record, okay? Save that for off.
I only bought one, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
It'll be a different pumpkin beer next time.
Great. Hopefully it's less gourdy.
Moving on. Let's shy away from politics for a moment and go to some science.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know if you heard about the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA for short.
I have now.
We all love acronyms here.
Yes.
Well, they had sent the Hayabusa 2 satellite or spacecraft into orbit around an asteroid not all that long ago. And in the last week, they jettisoned 2 little rovers, although they don't appear to be like the rovers that we might be familiar with in terms of the United States Mars rovers. They're basically just cylinders with some little spindly legs that poke out from the top and bottom of them, covered in what looks to be either solar panels or some type of reflectors or detectors for cameras or instruments. And they were jettisoned off of the spacecraft and have landed on the asteroid. This is the first instance of rovers landing on an asteroid in the history of humanity. So the name of the asteroid is Ryugu, I believe.
What does that mean?
Which I have no clue. I'm probably also pronouncing it incorrectly because I'm assuming since the Japanese named it, it's a Japanese name.
It's their asteroid.
It's their asteroid. They own it.
Finders
Not,
keepers.
not really, but in any event, the asteroid has extremely low gravity, as one would assume from it being considerably smaller than any planetary body or, say, even Pluto or its moons, which could be argued are potentially asteroids that were pulled into orbit around Pluto. But
Can I stop for a second? Where is this
yes,
asteroid?
that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, but
In space. We'll go with that.
you know, that honestly is a good question. And there's an app that you can probably use to figure that out.
Are you plugging the app? We're not sponsored at all, so don't even bother with that crap.
I mean, if we were sponsored by NASA, I'd be extremely
Okay, yeah, I would too, but we're not.
I'd be okay with that. Well, JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory out of California, Pasadena, has an app that you can use to track spacecraft and the Earth's vital signs of climate and wind and temperature and all of that, exoplanets and things of that nature. It's called NASA's Eyes, and you can download it online to look things up. Now, it'll probably take me too long to go through and actually find where the asteroid is, but I will keep it running in the background to see if I can get to it later. So we'll hold on that, and if I can find it, we'll bring it up later.
Okay.
But back to the topic at hand. The asteroid rovers use jumping instead of wheels to move around the surface. Because of the low gravity, they can jump at least 50 feet in the air, 50 feet in the air, or 15 meters if you're in metric. And they can hover in that configuration for as long as 15 minutes, which gives them great surveying capabilities to actually take pictures of the asteroid's surface and observe the various rocks, and you can't really say flora and fauna on an asteroid, but rocks and minerals or ice water or things of that nature to see what the topography of an asteroid is. So this is the second time that they have tried to land a rover on an asteroid, different asteroid. The first time that they launched I would assume it's probably Hayabusa 1. Might be wrong there, but they launched another mission in 2005 to attempt this, which didn't work. So this is the first successful attempt they have of it. They'll also be having the Hayabusa 2 launch a impactor into the asteroid that will explode above it and shoot a 2 kilo or 4 pound copper object, assuming just probably a slug, to the surface of the asteroid to make an impact crater. And the the probe that will be included with that copper object will collect fresh materials of the asteroid that haven't been exposed to solar wind and radiation from space to investigate the properties of that material. So it's an interesting application of things that I've seen a trend in with small CubeSats or like nanosats, things like that, where a lot of agencies with robotic exploration of the universe and planets are tending toward creative and multifaceted, or like multiple types of robotic landers or rovers, or even the space exploration tools, satellites and spacecraft to investigate the deep space objects and celestial objects that we see here on Earth.
Wow. So interrupt me when you find out where that asteroid is at.
I will.
I'm very curious. I know they remember they landed on that comet. It was fairly long ago, but it doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah, that was in the last few years, I believe.
Okay, very good.
'Cause it was the ESA, European Space Agency,
Yes.
and it was launched in 2004, but it took 10 years to get to the comet. So 2014, only about 4 years
Okay.
ago.
Man, I wish it didn't take so darn long to get those probes out to their destination.
Yeah, well, there's research going on. I know MIT and Lockheed Martin out in Palmdale, the Skunk Works division, is working on fusion propulsion or electrostatic containment propulsion, where you basically use charged particles to propel spacecraft instead of hefty rocket motors or reactionary motors.
So, in other words, magnets. Little particle magnets.
Yes. Not in the traditional sense of magnets
No.
like you might think, but close.
Magnetism. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make it simple, okay? Sue me.
It's still reasonably simple.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's bring it back down to earth. What do you say?
All right.
All right, John, have you ever been swimming in the deep end of a pool, like, it's like 10 to 12 feet deep?
I have.
Do you notice when you go to the very bottom of the deep end, you kind of get that little pain in your ears?
I do.
So, water in large quantities is heavy, pretty heavy.
It is.
My curiosity while I was reading this article got the better of me, and I looked up how deep human beings have gone diving in open water.
Okay.
And I found out that the deepest human free dive was 702 feet, or 214 meters. And the deepest scuba dive went to 1,090 feet. Now, the scuba dive, because it was so low, he had to take 9 oxygen tanks with him. And it only took him 12 minutes to reach the record depth, but it took 14 hours to decompress while he ascended to the surface.
Sounds about right.
Otherwise, he would have also broken the world record for worst case of the bends. Because that's what, if someone ever says I have the bends, it's decompression sickness from deep sea diving.
Yeah, not the Radiohead album.
No, although that's
arguably much better than the actual
very good album
bends that we're talking about.
Indeed, Baby's got the bends. So back on track. You may recall August of last year, Hurricane Harvey struck the southeast coast of Texas in the Houston area. John, I will give you a guess. How many trillions of liters of water were dumped on Houston, Texas?
3.
100.
I was way off.
Way off. 100 trillion liters
Good
of
God.
water were dumped onto the Houston, Texas area.
In how many days?
I do not know how long Hurricane Harvey lasted, to be honest with you. So researchers...
It's still a shitload, though.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. It could have been a very short amount of time. I'm not sure. So researchers used a network of satellites to measure the change in the elevation of the Earth's crust down to the nearest millimeter. Kind of like we discussed in ISAT 2.
Right.
It's amazing how accurate satellites are when you think about it.
Yeah.
But in this case...
We discussed that last week. Go check out last week's podcast.
Yes.
High Quality Podcast, actually.
Yes. High quality.
I don't remember the name of that one, but...
Nope, I forgot it too.
Anyway.
So, in this case, it was a network of satellites. ISAT 2 is just one satellite. So Earth's crust actually, whether you know this or not, has some rebound to it. So imagine the Earth's crust is like a trampoline, and the rain from Hurricane Harvey is a bunch of bowling balls that gradually fell off over the span of a few weeks of the Earth's crust trampoline. So the crust actually sank, as measured by the satellite network, 21 millimeters from all of the rain, and it took 5 weeks for the Earth's crust to rebound to its normal elevation after all the water had gone off in various ways. So most of the water drains off immediately back into the ocean, or whatever body of water is closest to where the hurricane happened. 10% will evaporate, and 30% will be stored in the land as standing water, or will evaporate, or will be used by plants. Now, you may ask yourself, why is this important? And I'll tell you why it's important. Because the method that was used by this research team can help to manage floods and future hurricanes and help emergency responders in dealing with floods. So monitoring the Earth's crust elevation could help in predicting what areas will see the most devastation from a hurricane. And much like ISAT-2 that we recently talked about, satellites being used to aid in predictive models of catastrophes. So, pretty cool stuff when you think about it.
Yep.
Satellites helping us out there.
Just looking through things to kind of give some perspective on what we were discussing in everything being in liters and the United States being stupid
Right.
and using imperial units.
Not quite caught up to the SI units.
Yeah. So for 100 trillion liters of water, 100 trillion liters is equal to 26 and a half trillion gallons of water, which is still kind of an unfathomable quantity.
I don't think I have insurance for that much water.
No, flood insurance definitely does not cover that. Now, do you know the weight of water? Like, say, 1 cubic foot of water off the top of your head?
No.
So,
Never
1
learned.
cubic foot of water is equal to roughly 8 pounds, or just over 8 pounds-ish. Or excuse me, no, that's a gallon of water. So that's even better. A gallon of water is about 8 pounds, we'll call it. Cubic foot of water is like 7.5. So a gallon of water is equal to 8 pounds. What's 26 times 8?
208.
Let's just double check that because I want to be absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay, so 208 trillion pounds.
Yes.
Additional pounds were placed
So that's
in the hurricane area.
Yeah. 208 trillion pounds sitting on the area of Houston-ish. I mean, if you wanted to be a little more accurate, maybe you could say half of Texas. So if you imagine having the crust as maybe a reasonably thin or, well, a reasonably thick sheet of like cardstock when you're comparing, say, the crust to the mantle and the rest of the interior of the Earth, you can pretty easily see how an extreme weight placed on a pretty small point will contribute to a large deviation in that plane or that surface.
It's pretty interesting. I didn't know the crust was so resilient to such pressures.
Yeah, well, as you and I both learned in college, the members of a, say, a structural element or a frame, if you're taking just your standard beam element,
Mm-hmm.
if you have
Yes.
a weight distributed along that beam, you can approximate that as a point load at a certain location on that beam. And when you have compression on the underside of a beam from a point load or a distributed load on the top of the beam, that means the top of the beam goes into tension, and it actually serves to cause strengthening in the outside surface of that beam member, because that's really what's bearing your load. It's not the interior material itself. Fun little mechanics of materials
Damn,
problem
dude.
there for you kids.
Wow.
Science is cool.
If it'd be easier if we could draw diagrams, because I think that field is called statics.
Statics, mechanics of materials. I know the course that I took was primarily more mechanics of materials for that, but statics comes into play there.
I think my school split it out, so it was mostly statics with some mechanics drawn in, but most of when you learned about mechanics, it happened more based on your discipline that you chose. So if you were an electrical engineer, you probably wouldn't learn a whole lot about the mechanics. But
Sure.
if you're like me, for biomedical, yeah, but mechanics did come into play, but we learned it more as applicable to the body and prosthetics, stuff like that. Whereas when you do mechanical engineering, you're going to do it towards, more, I don't know. What when you learned mechanics, what did you immediately apply it to?
Beams or structural elements.
Not like moving stuff? No? Okay, never mind.
No, that was
I thought it was something
kinematics.
fun. You had like rockets and stuff. I don't know.
No, kinematics was an entirely different course that we took on that subject.
God damn it.
Even the subtle differences in engineering. As a quick tangent, I did find out where the asteroid that Hayabusa 2 is orbiting around is at.
That's not a
It
tangent. That's relevant to what we were talking about.
Well, it's a tangent to the immediate conversation.
Okay, whatever.
In any event, the official name of the asteroid is 162173 Ryugu, which, as celestial bodies go, or, well, objects in the solar system go, that's a pretty standard naming convention. A little bit better, it actually has a proper noun to its name instead of just numbers or symbols. In any event, it's a near-Earth object, which means that it is a potentially hazardous asteroid that is in close enough orbit to the Earth. It actually intersects the orbit of the Earth at certain points in its orbit trajectory. It's not on the orbital plane of the solar system, as most asteroids and comets and things of that nature aren't, but it orbits within the orbit of Mars. So it crosses the orbits of both Venus and Earth at certain points, but it stays wholly within the orbit of Mars. So it's actually pretty close. It's not a majorly distant object, as I had originally assumed. So kind of little interesting tidbit there about that. And it was only discovered in 1999.
Wow. So we don't need to send Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck out quite yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Or probably, at all, really, for being honest.
If we get to that point, I'd rather not send them. I feel like that we have more qualified individuals for that.
They're the only ones who've succeeded at it, okay?
No, that is true. They do have experience.
That's right. So, because my week was so jam-packed, I didn't have a chance to cover everything I wanted to. But I'll give you a sneak preview of next week. Okay. I will be talking about Galileo versus the Church.
Ooh.
Which that could be a whole episode, to be honest with you. It's so lengthy and there's so much like nuances to it. It's pretty fascinating.
If we really wanted to go into history, there's a lot to delve into there.
Maybe we branch out, to
Maybe
high quality podcast action, science history.
podcast action.
Podcast action. And God damn it. The other one was pretty funny. Just the title said research on research. It literally is a study someone did about how we currently perform and present research in the scientific community. It was an interesting read, but I didn't have time to really summarize everything to fit into, a 1 hour segment that is also filled with Bart O'Kavanaugh and Trump embarrassing us on a global stage again.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that yet.
Did you hear him today? He had like a press conference.
I don't think so. I may have seen a headline about it, but I don't remember it.
He's losing it. There's no other way to say it. He's losing it. He sounds like the first time you have to present in front of a class, however old you may be, he sounds like a nervous kid who like forgot everything he was going to say and is just up there going like, it could be that. Yeah, I'm very good friends with that person, but go ahead. Failing New York Times. That's literally what he sounded like. He said he was fumbling all over himself. He was doing that typical thing where he's like berating the news outlets, saying that all the stories they have of him are negative, which first of all is nonsense. News stories don't have a bias, or they're not supposed to have a bias to them. They're just supposed to present information. And if he takes it as negative, then either A, it's bias, or B, really he's looking at himself in a negative fashion, which is kind of ironic when you think about it.
Yeah, well, there are news agencies who do have a bias. There are a fair number of them on both left and right sides of issues. And there's actually a helpful graph that you can search for on Google to figure out what news agencies are more in the middle and report primarily and almost exclusively on facts and not opinion pieces or any pieces with bias.
By the way,
top of those being the Associated Press.
Reuters is also a good one.
Reuters is a good one. The Washington Street Journal is reasonable, but left-leaning, not as bad as some. And of course, as we would assume, Breitbart is as far on the right as you can go.
Breitbart is like the Occupy Democrats of the right. Oh man, some of the left-wing like media sites like that are pretty entertaining in that it's extremism on a like such a sensitive level though. Yeah. Compared to Alex Jones' very aggressive inflammatory stuff. It's like they're both uber biased, but the uber bias of one side is so different from the opposite side. At least how it comes off.
We're pissed, but we don't want to step on anybody's toes. But we're still pissed.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. As much as there is fighting across sides of the left and right, where you have the whole snowflake moniker and things like that get thrown around, it goes both ways.
That snowflake term, I didn't think about it before, but I read somewhere, I cannot remember where, it originated in Fight Club. The Chuck Palahniuk novel that turned into the obviously famous movie. He was poking fun at this machismo, like I'm super tough and I don't have feelings thing, by having Tyler Durden use snowflake in a derogatory way. What's ultra funny is that movie is seen as very masculine and tough. Chuck Palahniuk is gay.
Yep.
He wrote the novel
Maybe
Yeah.
he is married now. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I used to read this stuff on his website a lot because it was pretty good, but I haven't in a long time.
Yeah.
But it was, to poke fun at men, and men have embraced it, which is kind of funny. Trump.
I would like to look into checking that and verifying that that's where that originally came from. I'm sure he's not the first person to have instigated that term or coined it, but
maybe, who knows? Someone.
If anybody's claiming that it's from a Chuck Palahniuk book, it's ironic.
I think maybe that's not the original place that it came from, but that's definitely the catalyst, where most people have taken it from and ran with it. There's this, I'm not going to look for the scene, but there is a scene where Tyler Durden talks about everybody being precious snowflakes.
Yeah, I recall that. It's been a while since I've read the book and seen the movie too, but
the book's pretty short. You could probably do that in a day.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
So, Trump was at the UN.
He was.
General Assembly, which was this week. And he got laughed at.
He did.
Yep. He touted the thing that initially started it was him saying that his administration had accomplished more in 2 years than any administration in history. And there was sort of a chortle, and then progressively more and more people started laughing. And he said, not the reaction I was expecting, but okay. And then the whole room started laughing. I'm not kidding you. The world was literally laughing at our president.
Yep.
And then today he flat out accused China of interfering with our elections, which, John, if you remember, Robert Mueller is investigating what country for interfering in 2016?
Russia.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but China and Russia are not the same place.
No, despite the fact that they might both be considered somewhat communist. China's definitely more communist than Russia is, although... But no, they're not the same place.
No. And he, today, when asked about, he accusing China of that, the reporter asked him how that affects his relationship with Xi Jinping. Well, now he's a lifetime appointed president. They give him a lifetime. Like, yeah, just stay there, be our president for life. And Trump is like, I still have a very good relationship with the man, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And he talked about, things need to be fair with trade and stuff. The normal, bogged down language that only his devout fans seem to really understand. And he's saying that on a world stage, on an international stage, he continues to talk in an inarticulate manner. Oh my God, where are we? Save us. Somebody, Mitch McConnell, save us. Well, we're going to plow right through having the president here. We don't want him to embarrass us anymore on the national stage, so we will be going forward with the 25th Amendment, in which I will not only remove him from the presidency, but I will place him in my substantially sized chin sack, and then we'll deal with him justly from there.
If only. If Mitch McConnell was our savior, I would be incredibly surprised.
I feel I needed a moment of redemption, and I've seen the opportunity to come there. I've made plenty of money now that I can overtake Charles and David Koch and rule my own evil empire.
Congratulations, Mitch. Please leave.
I think that's going to do it. I think we've had enough. I'm sorry. Well, thank you for listening to high-quality podcast action today.
No, we're not done, Mitch. We're not following your lead.
We're not done? Well, I thought we talk about tax reform.
No.
We're going to talk about taking healthcare away from poor people.
No.
What about cutting Social Security?
No.
No? Well, I'm
We're
out of
going to talk
ideas.
about optical rockets.
Optical rocket, that sounds like a socialist nightmare. But
Well, you can go fuck yourself. I've had enough of this. So, I used to work at a laser laboratory in Nebraska at UNL, University
shocking
of
that
Nebraska.
that's a thing in Nebraska. Some people might not know that.
It is.
A lot of people don't know that. There are lasers in Nebraska.
I didn't know it even when I was at the university until I got a job there.
Well, that's news to me as well.
Damn it. Anyway, the University of Nebraska Diocles Laser Laboratory is one of my old jobs. I had that job all the way through college, and I'm always proud when I can hear about them in the news. Well, recently, they were featured in the publication Physics Review Letters, or Physical Review Letters, which is one of the major publications in terms of the natural sciences and science in general. But they were listed in that publication for using one of the lasers that they have at the lab called Archimedes, the primary laser at the lab being Diocles. These lasers, just for reference, are on the terawatt and petawatt scale of power output, which, for those of you who may not know those terms off the top of your head, that would be 1 times 10 to the 12th or 10 to the 15th watts, where you might see a normal light bulb being rated for 60 or maybe even 100 watts for comparison in terms of the light power put out by these lasers. Incredibly powerful and very precise and focused, compact laser beams that are green. Fun fact. They used this extremely high-powered laser to accelerate electrons in some sort of fashion akin to like a rocket, maybe, where you might not be familiar with the fact that light exerts a force, and when you're using light of this kind of power, you produce an extreme force, which can be used to push electrons in a new direction from their original orientation at extreme speeds almost instantaneously, as the speed of light is pretty instantaneous. So applications of this could be in particle accelerator technology, where you could use a laser beam to essentially push a particle beam of electrons and serve as either a kind of, if you're thinking about maybe like biking, at least for me, forming an analogy from that, where you have someone in front of you to provide a windbreak. The laser beam or the laser pulse could be used as a means to provide a windbreak, as it were, for the electron bunch that was behind it, or if it were in front of it, it could provide a push, not unlike that of a accelerating vehicle that is pushing a load up a hill or something of that nature. Very crude analogies there, but the idea remains the same, where they are able to use this extreme laser light fired through helium gas, and when the beam of light is passed through the helium gas and its sea of electrons, the force causes these electrons to oscillate at relativistic speeds, that is, speeds that are nearing the speed of light or comparable to the speed of light. Once they oscillate at those speeds, then the magnetic field begins to act in conjunction with the electric field, and that intensifies the force, which is what creates the overall effect of this massive acceleration. So it could be used in a variety of applications, particle accelerators being one, synchrotrons being another, where you would use the radiation generated by this extremely fast electron beam to image materials or cellular structures, crystals, things of that nature, to look at the atomic scale of these materials and samples. And it could be used to drastically reduce the size of these technologies for particle accelerators and in materials science applications. Instead of having massive 700-meter long particle accelerators in circular rings, you could have something in the size of a standard laboratory, small laboratory inside an academic building, taking up maybe, 2 or 3 regular sized offices.
Instead of a 16.5 kilometer ring.
Yes. So the implications of this could be pretty far reaching and would definitely reduce the operating cost of these facilities that, with the United States has a fair amount of particle accelerators in it. The main labs, we've got the lab at Cornell University. There's another lab in Brookhaven, New York, on Long Island. And then Stanford, a linear accelerator out there. There's also a source at Berkeley, the advanced light source. And then Fermilab and the neutron source down in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So there are a few particle accelerators, and more than that in the United States as well. These particle accelerators can be used for creating medical isotopes, a variety of particle accelerators, albeit lower power than some. And of course, there's the LHC over in CERN, Switzerland, and France. But interesting applications coming out of what most people would consider the middle of nowhere, our home state of Nebraska.
Super flat. I always hear that.
Not as flat as Eastern Ohio.
It's true. It's so flat. Yeah, I've been to a lot flatter places than Nebraska, TBH. Texas, I don't know why Texas doesn't have a reputation for being flat. That place is like a piece of paper. Like, just put it on a flat table. There's fucking Texas right there. I don't know why people don't think of Texas as flat.
Iowa's flat.
Iowa's pretty fucking flat.
Eastern Ohio's flat.
I
remember when I drove through Eastern Ohio going up toward Cleveland, and I was surprised at how flat it was. And I lived my whole life in Nebraska.
Right, exactly.
So that's saying something.
I mean, there's not very much reason for anybody to go to Nebraska, but if there's any reason, really, just drive on through there just to see that it's not as flat as people have told you. I don't know why I'm so adamant about Nebraska not being flat, but I'm gonna stand up and say that is a false accusation.
It is. I would agree with that. Also, we have more than corn. We've got beef. Fun fact: Nebraska is not the biggest producer of corn in the country.
No.
Iowa is.
Iowa.
You know what Nebraska's name is as a state?
Soybeans?
The beef state.
It's the beef. Are we the number one producer of beef?
Yes, we are.
What?
Yep.
Wow. That makes me want some beef right now.
Even though it's 9 o'clock at night, I would agree with you.
You know what still fascinates me about, kind of like you mentioned, from particle accelerators going to this, miles in circumference ring down to, something that takes up an office. Kind of reminds me of, at least on the medical side of things, how medical imaging has come quite a long way in terms of taking up space. Because the first MRI, when they built it, if you ever had an MRI and you know the room that it's in, imagine that room and a second room, and that was how much space it took for the computer alone in order to create an image. Now you can have an MRI machine, and the computer only takes up about as much space as, I don't know, maybe the biggest dresser you have in your room, or if you think about like a medium-sized file cabinet, just two medium-sized file cabinets. So it's pretty impressive how we can get smaller. And what that does is not only save money, but it allows more people to be able to do the research, or in case of medicine, diagnostics.
Yep. It's interesting that there are so many wide-ranging applications that you could see coming from something like this. And the analogy of shrinking in size for medical imaging, we're finally getting to the point where we are looking towards shrinking particle accelerators, and we've been shrinking electronics for decades at this point.
Hey, you know what? When are we going to shrink people? I want an Ant-Man suit. Where's the real-life Hank Pym?
You have to find Pym particles first.
Damn it.
And
should have studied physics more.
We don't have those yet, but we also don't have a complete standard model for particle physics, so maybe they're included in that.
I'll just like volunteer to be the first person to...
All right, we're closing it off.
Shrink
We gotta come up with a title. Get out of here, Mitch.
High quality particle accelerators.
Just talk about particle accelerators.
High quality crust dips.
No, let's try and combine things here.
High quality pumpkin beer. I don't know. We didn't talk about a whole lot of stuff with nouns. That's the other issue.
High quality Hayabusa Kavanaugh.
How the hell do you spell that?
Hayyabasu.
No,
No.
I'm vetoing that.
I spelled that wrong anyway.
God. Well, let's see. We talked about asteroids, the Earth's crust, Hurricane Harvey, particle accelerators. We already have the title involving lasers, so that's out.
Yeah.
Maybe we just don't have one.
Maybe we don't. We've got to come up with something, though. It'd be a disservice.
High quality asteroid bots.
High quality asteroids affidavits.
High quality asteroid affidavits.
Sure. It's got alliteration. It's got both science and politics involved in it.
That would make me, if I saw that title on the YouTube video or on the, some kind of podcast sharing website, I would definitely click on it.
Wouldn't you all do the same?
It may be related to aliens. You don't know until you listen.
No way to tell. Thumbs up. Let's do this.
All right.
Jenkins.
For real, high quality.
All right, we're closing this off without Mitch here. We'll be back next week.
Get the fuck out, Mitch.
Another episode of High Quality Podcast Action discussing various topics from politics, science, and the rest of the world, including beer and maybe some comedic things.
I mean, I think we're kind of funny. Maybe that's just me. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. TTFN.
Peace out, motherfucker.